Good evening. I'm Councillor Clive English, the Chairman of the Planning Committee, and I'm pleased to welcome you to this remote adjourned meeting of the committee. The meeting will be broadcast live and recorded for playback on the Council's YouTube channel. This will include the instant messaging. Will anyone else be recording the proceedings? I ask this so that people at the meeting will know if this is happening and not in order to prevent it. I don't see any indications as Councillor Mackay is not with us this evening. I'm not expecting any, so I take that as a no. I will now explain further how this meeting will be conducted. My role as chairman will continue, but a Democratic Services Officer and a legal representative will assist in implementing the remote meeting protocols. The Democratic Services Officer will also produce the minutes and provide procedural advice as may be required. Instead of public speaking, members of the public have been invited to submit written statements to be read out by me as chairman, or videos or audio recordings to be played in the appropriate slot. As far as I know, there are no statements or video recordings or even audio recordings this evening. I will provide further explanation as may be needed throughout the agenda, but members are reminded at this point that instant messaging will be visible to those viewing the meeting and should only be used for raising technical issues, indicating a wish to speak, raising a point of order, or seconding a motion. I will now ask the Democratic Services Officer to take the attendance register by reading out the list of members in alphabetical order. Members should confirm their attendance by answering present, if indeed they are present. Mrs. Smith.
Thank you, Chairman. Good evening, members. I'll now take the register. Councillor Atkinson.
Present.
Councillor Brindle.
Present.
Councillor English.
Present.
We've received apologies from Councillor Eves this evening. Councillor Harwood.
Present.
Councillor Kimantz.
Present.
Councillor Mumford.
Present.
Councillor Parfitt Reid.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Perry.
Present.
Councillor Powell.
Present.
Councillor Spooner.
Present.
Councillor Vizard.
Present.
Councillor Wilby.
Present.
Thank you.
Before I proceed with the rest of the agenda, I believe this will be Councillor Atkinson's last meeting of this committee.
I think there's one in April, isn't there?
Oh yes, there is one in April. Sorry, Councillor Atkinson. My apologies.
Our tears in April.
Well, I'm going to take this opportunity just in case to thank you for your service to this council for years, and say how personally sorry I am to see that you won't be a member after the elections. Thank you for all you've done, and particularly for your role in this committee as Labour Group spokesman and as a member. Thanks, Keith. I may not have the chance to say that in the April meeting because it may be a long agenda.
Might well be. Well, thanks, Clive. I don't know what to say except thanks for those nice words. And you've been half decent yourself.
Thank you very much. Well, I wish you well. Now for the attendance register for officers. Mrs. Snook, if you could read out the list of officers attending and which items they are presenting as appropriate.
Thank you, Chairman. Not quite as long a list as we had on Thursday, and the item numbers that I'll read out relate to the original agenda. So we have James Bailey, Development Manager for items 21, 22, 23 and 24. Russell Fitzpatrick, Legal Representative. Tony Ryan, Development Team Leader for item 16. And me, Debbie Snook, Democratic Services Officer. Thank you.
Right, thank you for that, Mrs. Snook. We now proceed to item 1, apologies. If we can ask you to read out the list of apologies.
We've received apologies from Councillor Eves.
And no others?
No, Chairman.
In that case, I now ask you if there are any substitute members.
Thank you, Chairman. This evening, Councillor Young is substituting for Councillor Eves. I believe she's on the call.
And I take it that we don't have any visiting members this evening. Do we have any visiting members?
No, Chairman.
Thank you. And there are no items, as far as I know, to be withdrawn from the agenda. Item 5, urgent items. I do intend to take the urgent update report in relation to agenda item 16 and any verbal updates as urgent items as they contain further information relating to the applications to be considered at the meeting. I will take the absence of dissent for agreement. That is agreed. Item 6, are there any disclosures by members and officers? Please only speak if you do have a disclosure.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Yeah.
Councillor.
Yeah. So sorry. Yeah. I would like to declare an OSI interest in tonight's meeting. Most of you would have received an email from the applicant with regards to the Redwood application. So I will declare that I have an ongoing issue regarding a piece of my garden that is in dispute regarding ownership. This is not adjoining the Red Line site. It's 94 metres away. Therefore, I will speak to the application, but not participate in further discussions or the vote. I will leave the room and rejoin at the next item on the agenda. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Are there any other disclosures? No. In that case, we move on to item 7, disclosures of lobbying. I ask Mrs. Snook to ask members of the committee and any substitutes in alphabetical order if they have any disclosures of lobbying. It should answer none or yes and then specify the agenda item or items concerned.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Atkinson.
Yes, item 16.
Councillor Brindle.
Yes, item 16.
Councillor English.
Yes, item 16.
Councillor Harwood.
No, not that I've seen, thank you.
Councillor Comance.
Yeah, item 16.
Councillor Mumford.
Item 16.
Councillor Parfitt-Reed.
Item 16.
Councillor Perry.
Item 16.
Councillor Powell.
Item 16.
Councillor Spooner.
Yes, item 16.
Councillor Vizard.
Yes, item 16.
Councillor Wilby.
Item 16.
And Councillor Young.
None, thank you.
None.
Thank you very much. Right, item 8, to consider whether any items should be taken in private because of the possible disclosure of exempt information. There shouldn't be any this evening, so I intend to take all the items in the agenda in public as proposed. I now move on to the committee reports for this evening. I'll read out the agenda item from the original agenda and then refer to the officer who will be presenting the report. I'll advise members of the list I've received by IM of any member wishing to speak, and then ask if any other members wish to speak. At appropriate points after members have spoken, I will invite officers to respond. After the list of members, which hopefully won't be too long, has been exhausted, I will ask if any members wish to come back with any questions, comments. If any member wishes to propose a new motion or amend the current one, I will ask for a seconder with members going through IM or indicating verbally, and the first one to signal will be the seconder. They may speak at that point or reserve their right. At the end of the debate, any amendments having been voted on, I will sum up, and the original motion or substantive motion as amended will be put to the vote. The legal representative will go through the list of members in alphabetical order and ask them for their vote, which would be for, against or abstain. By voting, the member is confirming that they have been present for the whole debate on that item on which they are taking an informed decision. If there is no response, it will be assumed that the member is not present. I will have a second or casting vote regardless of whether I have used my first. The Democratic Services Officer will be asked to confirm the result of the vote, and I will announce the decision. Unless requested by 3 members of the committee by IM or verbally, the names of those voting for or against a motion or amendment or abstaining from voting will not be recorded. If a report is for information only, I will ask if it is agreed that the report be noted, and if there is no dissent, a named vote will not be taken. At the end of each item, if it's lengthy, I will ask for a brief pause while anyone who's here for that item wishes to leave. It probably won't be the case this evening, I hope. And we proceed to item 16, which was on page 119 of the original agenda, and I call upon Mr. Ryan, who's been waiting a long time to do this, to introduce the report.
Thank you, Chair. Hopefully you can see my screen.
Not yet, but hopefully it will come up.
Okay. Let's try something else then.
Here we are. There, got it now. Thank you.
You got it? Yeah, good stuff. This application is for the construction of 6 one-bedroom tourist lodges on land at the end of Chegworth Lane in Harwich.
Tony, that's gone again. I can't see it now.
It should come back, is it?
No.
I've just got a blank screen.
I think there's a delay in it.
Yeah, it was there. It's gone again.
Yeah, it's got a blank screen.
Tony, can I just ask, are you sharing your desktop or are you sharing a presentation? If you're sharing a desktop,
a window. I think when
a desktop.
When Councillor English said it wasn't there, I went off it, so there's probably a delay in coming back, I think.
You might have to come out and go back in again. So stop sharing and then reshare, and that'll right, because it's, to us it looks you're supposed to be sharing, but it's blank screen.
Okay.
Yeah, no problem, Tony.
I'll do that. Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
Oh dear.
That's better.
Thank you very much, Tony.
It might go again. It might go again. The application is a resubmission.
Tony, the screen's gone.
Yeah, I think in terms of the actual delay, I think I'll keep it on the screen for a bit, and it should come back. The application is a resubmission of an early application that was refused permission in October 2019. An appeal was submitted against the refusal of permission. Just running through briefly the reasons for refusal.
Tony, it's not coming back.
Yeah, I think the previous 2 times it has come back. So if I just leave it till I've finished on the screen, and then I'll try again. The first reason for refusal was based on the impact on the character and appearance of the area and the wider landscape. The planning inspector concluded that reason for refusal was not justified. On the second reason for refusal, the inspector found that based on the proposal at that time, the works in the adjacent designated local wildlife site, there was insufficient information available to properly assess the impact on the biodiversity value of that area. On the third reason, the inspector concluded that on the grounds of air quality and noise and disturbance, the council's reasons for refusal was unjustified, as there was no evidence to support the council's reasons for refusal. The current resubmitted application has sought to address the concerns that were raised by members and the comments from the appeal inspector. The current application was submitted in August last year, and over the last 7 months, discussions have taken place with consultees and the agent to try and resolve a number of further issues that have been raised by neighbours and the parish council. Is the screen? Can you see the screen now?
No.
Okay.
And this is causing. No,
Tony, I think it's probably easier if I just show on my screen. Oh, it's come up.
Different. It's not. That's not the same.
Oh, okay.
So if I try again.
All the presenters' windows are minimised.
Okay.
There's nothing to see right now, and we do really rather need to see this. Oh, there it is again.
We can see that, Tony.
Is that there?
Yeah, I can see it.
On the screen? Yeah, excellent.
Oh, it's gone again.
Good.
Don't go full screen yet. I'll leave it like that then. Is that? Can you see that now?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, excellent. Okay. The application site is a triangular plot of land located in the countryside between Harwich and Leeds Castle. The site itself is currently open in character, consisting of mown grassland. Whilst there are no trees on the site itself, the site is surrounded by trees and planting on neighbouring land. In terms of the aerial photograph, the site is accessed via Chegworth Lane to the west. Site is in a secluded location adjacent to the east of a cluster of residential dwellings. The property called Wentways is immediately adjacent to the west of the application site, with the applicant living at the nursery, which is just to the west of Wentways. A 30-metre wide M20 motorway embankment is to the northern site boundary. The embankment is heavily planted with dense trees and shrubs. The railway line and the A20 Ashford Road are located further north beyond the elevated M20 carriageway. An area of woodland and the River Len runs generally parallel to the southern application boundary. The woodland area, including the River Len, is a designated local wildlife site. A listed building called Fir Cottage, which is Grade 2 listed, is located to the west of the site, around 94 metres away. And there was a cluster of listed buildings in the southwest of the site, around about 200 metres away, which is off this image. In terms of the photographs, this photograph is looking east along the accessway with the M20 embankment to the left of this view. To the right is the property called Wentways. In the distance at the end of this view, the access turns sharply right towards the site entrance. And this is the view once you've turned that corner. And this view looking into the site with the entrance gate visible in the background. The drainage ditch on the right hand side of the access is also highlighted. In terms of the site itself, the third photograph is taken from within the site, looking towards the eastern end. The M20 embankment is on the left hand side with the local wildlife site on the right. In terms of the site layout, the 6 detached lodges are located to the northwest part of the site, with the entrance in a northwest corner. The overall site covers an area of 0.85 hectares, with the tallest lodges on an area covering 0.39 hectares. The area at the eastern end of the application site, covering 0.46 hectares, will have restricted public access and will provide a new wildlife area. A total of 9 parking spaces are proposed with 3 electric charging points. There's a vehicle charging facility at the eastern end of the accessway. The north, south and east boundaries of the area where the lodges are located will be marked by a new native species hedge, and within that hedge there will be a new sort of weld metal fence. As an example of this fence, some photographs here. The fencing will have sort of planting, as is shown here, and a planting as an immediate backdrop. And as the top image shows, the fence panels appear almost transparent from a distance. On the lodges themselves, they are constructed with insulated timber weatherboard cladding. They have a 8 metre by 5 metre footprint, including a covered veranda to the southern side. A low hedge encloses an area to the south of each lodge. The buildings incorporate a shallow pitched roof with overall height of approximately 4 metres above ground level. Finally, in summary, the proposal would not have any harmful impact on the character and appearance of the area or the wider landscape. The proposal is in accordance with adopted policies that aim to protect the landscape and the countryside. With the measures outlined in the report and the changes from the previous application, including the removal of the drainage from the local wildlife site and the restriction on access, the potential for adverse impact on wildlife habitats, both on the application site and within the local wildlife site, is minimal. The application provides an opportunity to improve the adjacent wildlife site by reintroducing coppicing back into the woodland, with a proposed wildlife area at the eastern end of the application site. The proposal provides an opportunity to introduce new wildlife habitat onto the application site itself. The proposal is considered acceptable in relation to air quality and noise, with submitted reports considered acceptable after assessment by the Environmental Health Officer. The vehicle access arrangements to and from the site are suitable for the tourist lodge proposal, with the widening of the pinch point secured by a planning condition. These arrangements have been considered on 2 separate occasions by Kent Fire and Rescue and KCC Highways and found to be acceptable. An urgent update, the urgent update is highlighted, correcting the outcome of the appeal on page 121 of the officer report, and that's in the second bullet point, and just to confirm that the earlier appeal was dismissed. We've also omitted from the report a requirement for on-site renewable energy, so it's proposed to include a further condition requiring details of on-site renewable energy. With the conditions, the application is considered in accordance with relevant government guidance in the NPPF and policies in the adopted local plan, with the NPPF supportive of the principle of holiday tourism related proposals in rural areas such as this. And in light of this, the recommendation is to approve planning permission subject to planning conditions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Councillor Powell, I do understand you did wish to speak to this and then leave.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I mean, it doesn't seem that long ago that watching this case as a member of the public in the town hall, those were the days. I'm reminded it was back in 2019. But since then, this application has been rejected by an inspector's report and it's back on the table this evening. However, this application is completely different to the last one, which was rejected unanimously by this committee. The application has been completely reshaped by the consultees. Firstly, Highways England are concerned with the safety, so they have asked for a 2-metre mesh fence to be put right the way along the northern border. Secondly, KCC Ecology have asked that all access to the wildlife site should be denied. So that means the east and south side of this 0.84 hectare site will also have a 2-metre mesh fence. The site is now completely enclosed by fencing, given the conditions requested by the consultees. Looking at the revised plan, it appears that the applicant is asking for an additional 3 disabled parking spaces and 3 electric charging points to be added to the existing 6-car parking spaces, a massive increase in the concreted mass. A health and safety measure has also suggested a small road and turning area to accommodate emergency services and other vehicles to depart from the site in a forward gear in this very restricted area. The hard standing areas have now been increased by over 50%. I also noted on the officer's report that KCC are suggesting that if planning is permitted, then the usual bin collector van would be too big for this constrained site. That's KCC words. And therefore a smaller private truck be used. I would suggest that if this application is granted, then smaller vehicles to be used for all construction and service purposes. The inspector did give reference in his report suggesting that information on air quality and noise from the motorway was rather lacking, and therefore he was not prepared to comment. This time a noise impact assessment has been done, and it suggests that the noise levels are way above the suggested safe limit. It appears that this has been mitigated by double glazing and mechanical ventilation. The report states windows should be closed at all times except when purging fumes from cooking. An example they gave was burnt toast. However, it also states that if the windows are open, the internal noise levels will be exceeded. Not ideal for a country retreat. It is clear the visual impact has changed dramatically in a negative way due to the consultee's conditions, and therefore this revised application contravenes Local Plan Policy SP17 and DM30. Local Plan Policy SP17 seeks to prevent harm to the character and appearance of the countryside and states that the distinctive landscape character of the Len Valley will be conserved and enhanced as a landscape of local value. Lastly, on item 6.68 on the officer's report, can I draw your attention to the Grampian condition? I'm not sure if I'm the only member of this planning committee who didn't know what a Grampian condition is or was. It certainly wasn't in my training when my 3 sessions with the planning officers. But don't worry, I've looked it up. This condition is between Kent Highways and the applicant, whereby the applicant needs an additional 60 centimetres to widen the limited access to the site. The condition suggests that no work can commence until 60 centimetres is granted permission. That's not a problem, except Kent Highways don't actually own the land, and yet they still raised the condition. Highways England own the land, stated at 6.13 on the committee report, but I can't see anything on the papers to suggest they have been consulted. 2 questions before I leave the meeting. Why has an important consultee not been notified? And if they have, why wasn't this information on the report? I'm sure the members will ask. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Powell. Right, I don't see anyone else wishing to speak at this point. So I will ask whether Mr. Ryan can answer that question, whether Highways England were asked about this piece of land and whether it matters whether or not they have responded. Tony?
Yeah, well, the Highways England were consulted on the application, and their comments are in the actual report at 519.
Mm-hmm.
So that is on the principle of what is proposed.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of precisely the widening of the access, the use of a Grampian planning condition basically puts the onus back onto the applicant to resolve off-site issues prior to work starting. So the onus is on the applicant to go away and sort out off-site issues with other landowners, and then come back and resolve those issues prior to work starting. So in that situation, the Highways England or other landowners don't need to be consulted on that particular issue as part of a planning application.
And if the applicant can't sort out those issues, are we confident they won't be able to go ahead with the application? Then is that what you're saying?
Yes. The wording of the condition is that if the applicant can't resolve those issues, then the application, the whole application doesn't go ahead.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Mrs. Brindle has indicated.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Could you put up slide number 10 again, please? Thank you. I'm looking at the front of the lodge. There, can I take it that screening down the steps there, and then there's screening at right angles, and then to the right of left as you're looking at the building? Is that I can't. The writing is so small, I can't see what that consists of, please.
There's you mean is it the actual veranda? Is that
no? Come down from where you are now. Look there. What's that?
Yeah. That's not screening. That's a low hedge to just enclose an external area around the lodges.
How low are they? How low are they planning on the hedge? I'm just thinking of noise pollution for people in the vicinity.
That is about a metre in terms of that hedge.
Okay, and are they putting in little wee sticks, or are they putting in a mature hedge?
It will be, well, I think they haven't specified, but as they haven't specified, I would say that it would be the hedge would need to go up to that metre height.
What, from the outset? In other words, a mature hedge will be put in.
No, I think he's saying the opposite.
Yes. Yeah. They haven't specified, so in that situation, it wouldn't be a mature hedge. No.
So we're looking at little wee sticks then that will take years to grow.
Well, I mean, if the committee were minded to say that landscape condition needs to be amended, that is.
Well, I think so. If only because of pollution. I mean, a metre's not very high. It's not going to screen much, and therefore it won't provide any safeguard from excess noise for the surrounding area.
I think that the purpose of that hedge is just to provide some space for occupants. It's not designed to actually provide sort of noise screening.
Okay.
But I think the feeling might be that a metre is still quite short for privacy purposes, and it might be 1.5 metres to 2 metres might be more appropriate if you really want privacy. But that's just my point.
Well, I was thinking, Mr. Chairman, I was thinking more of trying to keep the noise pollution down, because we all know we know what will happen. That hopefully we'll have some summer and sun. I know we've had a lovely day today, but people will be outside. There will be music, and I'm just a bit concerned for the residents of Chegworth Lane that are there now. The effect that any excess noise will have on them, and I was hoping that this screening will provide some measure of keeping the noise levels down.
Yeah, well, I think it's a bit academic as to what the reason would be, because obviously if there were higher hedging, then it might have that effect. But I think it might be more easier to pin it on improving the privacy, which might actually also help, rather than to say it's a noise prevention measure. But that's up to people to argue. Now I'll go over to Councillor Young. Councillor Young.
Yes, sorry, trouble with the mouse. Thank you, Chairman. Just a question about the triangular area that is going to be made over to wildlife area on the eastern end of the site. Will there be a fence between the proposed buildings and that site, or will there be a high hedge? And also, would the occupants of these lodges have access to that area? Because I know from my own experience going to campsites, often people take dogs with them and they like to walk somewhere. And I was just wondering if that area would be accessible to the occupants of those lodges if this planning application actually goes through. So perhaps the officer could give me some information about that, please. Thank you.
Mr. Ryan?
In short, no. The idea is for that wildlife area to have restricted access, and the idea is whilst a native hedge to be introduced along the eastern and northern boundaries, but whilst that hedge is growing, of course, people can actually access that separate bit of land. So that's where the weld mesh fence comes in. So the weld mesh fence will actually restrict access whilst the hedge grows up. And I think the idea is that there will be a lockable gate within that eastern boundary, which will, if access is required, then of course they can use the gate, but otherwise no, there'll be no public access to that land.
Okay, thank you. So it would be up to the owner of the property, of the actual site, as to whether they would allow the occupants to use that particular area, or presumably the whole thing will be planted up.
Yes, indeed.
Okay, thank you.
I'm going to take Councillor Kimmans, and I'm going to try and bring us to some sort of conclusion. Councillor Kimmans.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's just a question, and it might be a really oddball question. I do apologise if it is.
Go for it. I like oddball questions.
I know in the past, when we've granted some applications, we've had living walls. Is there such thing as a living fence? So is there some sort of fence where you can put the fence up and then grow the vegetation up the fence to screen off the noise?
Well, I believe there is, but
yeah, it's called ivy. Yeah.
Indeed, Tony. Did you want to come in at this point?
Yes, I actually think Ashley has brought in quite a good idea, because ivy is actually quite good from a noise insulation perspective, and particularly the mesh fence. There is an example in your ward, Chairman, where there's a mesh fence around Sainsbury's car park.
I know it well.
And that has worked really very effectively. So as part of the landscaping scheme, yes, you could condition climbers such as ivy to go up the fence, which is more instant than the hedgerow, as a number of the other members of the committee have mentioned. My one question did relate to the landscaping, because I think this stands or falls on the enclosure of the site, in terms of the impact, not just on neighbouring residents, but also on the local wildlife site. Mm-hmm. And this kind of thin end of the wedge, this kind of acute triangle, which is going to be a meadow. Is there going to be a landscape and ecological management plan, or is there some sort of management plan? Because a meadow, it can be anything. It could be a mown area of grass, it could be cut at the wrong time of year, it could be very little value for wildlife. There's currently, in the kind of drawn landscaping proposal we have, there's no proposal to plant anything in it that I can see. It talks about a planted meadow, but to my mind the area's too dark and the soil is too rich really to be a meadow. I think it could serve as rough grass, with a kind of mosaic of areas cut, with different areas cut in alternate years or something. It could work really quite well, but I am not confident that we currently have any detail on how it will be managed and maintained going forward. So that's one point, the fact that we need some sort of a management plan as to how it's going to be maintained, which we know will be of benefit to wildlife and landscape. The other issue just relates to the future. If permission is granted this evening, would the permission mean that any attempt to move further lodges into the triangle of meadow, or to allow access and so on, that would require planning permission? Or would it be a permitted development? Would it be just too trifling to require permission? I just want to really work out whether the conditions are tight enough to ensure that you know, we approve this tonight. We think we've safeguarded the natural area and the residents, and then in a couple of years' time, we just see an expansion into that site. It may not be an expansion of lodges, but it may be an expansion to make it, as has been mentioned, an area to have picnics or play football or kind of exercise the dog, which would undermine that nature conservation role.
Okay, well, I think the question is, do we need a condition for the fencing, and do we need a management plan? And thirdly, are we confident that minor amendments couldn't change the nature of this approval? Mr. Ryan and Mr. Bailey, can you assist us with those points?
In terms of the ecological management plan, condition 6 on the top of page 143 of the agenda does actually require a management plan with a 5-year program.
I think Mr. Harwood may be suggesting 5 years is a bit short.
Okay, we can increase that to 10. But that requires, the sort of the details of the management of that area. And in terms of the future sort of encroachment of the tourist lodge area into that area, that plan condition 8, also on page 143, has sought to address that, and that sets out that the site should be laid out in accordance with the submitted plans, and that would mean that any movement of that boundary would need a separate application.
Okay, and ivy on the fencing.
Yes, we can specify ivy on the fencing as part of the landscaping. Yes.
Thank you. Right, does that satisfy you, Councillor Harwood? Because I want to move on.
Chairman, could I just add something to that?
Of course.
Whilst I totally accept in terms of what Mr. Ryan has set out there, I think if members did want the confidence in terms of condition 8 for absolute clarity, members could extend or reword condition 8 to slightly to say that effectively no development shall move into, because it is within the planning unit. When you've got to look at the red line area, that whole area is in the red line, and for the avoidance of doubt, members could have said that there should be no development moved into that area, into the sort of the planted meadow area, including any use for tourism related purposes, and should be maintained as an open meadow land at all times. So you can add a bit more clarity to that condition if members so wished.
I think that is the direction that members were travelling. So,
I think that's reasonable to do so then.
Right, Councillor Harwood, anything else? Otherwise, I'm moving on to Councillor.
Yeah, no, I think that Mr. Bailey's additional clarity is welcome if that can be incorporated once something is moved. And I think in terms of that management and maintenance going forward, I don't think it should be too sophisticated. I think what we want is to allow that to develop its own ecology, not so much plant it up, kind of leave it to grow, see what turns up, and just cut different areas at different times in different years. And I think then you'd have a really good wildlife area. I think if you try and seed things into it, probably those plants will escape into the local wildlife site area and cause issues. So I think quite a hands-off approach, because of its proximity to a known very special wildlife site, will be important. Thank you.
If you want to add an informative to that effect, I'm sure that will be helpful.
Yes, once something is moved, I can frame it.
Okay, well, in that case, I'll move the recommendation as amended with those changes to those conditions, plus an informative, which you may now wish to add.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. The informative is that the nature conservation area be maintained as rough grass with a mosaic mowing regime which ensures that some areas are not cut in any one year. So effectively you'd probably be looking at an autumn cut on part of the site and part of the site left, and then the following year you alternate and then you do the autumn cut on the other part of the site, if that makes sense.
Makes perfect sense.
And in that way, overwintering wildlife such as amphibians, reptiles and invertebrates are not all cut off in their prime because the whole area is not cut in any one year. And if officers have kind of caught that, it does make a kind of sense. Right, thank you.
I think they have caught it. If not, please tell me now, Mr. Bailey or Mr. Ryan.
No, we've caught that. I've got that recorded.
Thank you. Councillor Wilby.
Yes, Chairman, thank you. Most of it's been covered. I was just going to, I do apologise if this is a condition already, but I recycled my papers after the last meeting. It's just about the actual paving or the road, about just making sure it's permissible. So I've got block paving, not concrete, so that the drainage issues that have been raised, that actually the water can soak away. Are we able to make that condition?
Paving, right. Okay. Is that covered, Mr. Ryan, Mr. Bailey? Is it at least semi-permeable surfacing?
I think we don't have an actual condition which asks for servicing, so we can add that. Yes.
I think it might be wise in the location, so that's added, and I accept that into the motion. Right. Councillor Atkinson.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I don't want to disappoint anyone, so I'm going to mention solitary bees, accommodation therefore, under condition 5 and condition 16, we should exclude sycamores and have no plastic guards. And as far as the management plan was concerned, we were talking about, I wonder if maybe if there is going to be one, it should be reviewed every 5 years and updated if necessary. Thank you.
That's all very sensible. Councillor Brindle wanted to come back.
Yes, do members feel it appropriate to add the comments that both you and I mentioned about privacy around the lodges?
Yeah, I mean, what do members think? I don't think there's any problem in making that hedge a bit taller, do you? Anyone have a problem with that?
I think, Chairman, the way to do that is through the landscape and ecological management plan, that we just prescribe a height for the hedge, because otherwise it will get whacked off by contractors to a foot high.
Yeah.
Okay, that'll be fine.
Yeah, that. Thank you, Tony. That will be helpful. I just finished reading that as I put my may I speak in, so that would be great if that could be included, please.
Thank you. That seems to be an effective way of doing it. Mr. Fitzpatrick, you'll probably get the last word there.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Just a request, if I may. In condition 8, as part of the reasons, can we also insert for protection of biodiversity or something in there? Because at the moment it just seems to be saying interest of amenities of the occupiers, whereas I think what Councillor Howard is actually saying is, well, we're also protecting the biodiversity in that area. That's the intent of it. And to stop people using it for amenities.
I think that's a very sensible.
It is protection, and it is protection and enhancement of biodiversity. Yeah.
Yeah. So that if there's ever a dispute about why that condition was imposed, I think if the primary reason is to put it in for the protection of biodiversity, then I think maybe we should leave it as that. Maybe visual amenity, I get. I'm just worried about the interests of the amenities of the occupiers, because the whole idea.
That could be a conflict, couldn't it?
Yeah, I think that part. If the intent is to protect biodiversity, remove that first part, the interests of amenities, because we're not trying to protect the interests of the amenities there, or allow the use of that site for amenity purposes, but rather for the protection of biodiversity, visual amenity, I get, and character and appearance of the open countryside.
That's a very fair point. Thank you for raising that.
And Chair, I've got another 2 quick questions, if I may. The Councillor Powell mentioned earlier something about the highway works that had to be done pursuant to a condition. Sorry, Tony, could you just clarify what condition that is?
11.
Condition 11. Okay. Widening the site shall be submitted to an approved rather than approved. Okay. And then the other question I have is just with regards to the management plan. There was first there's an indication of 5 years, then there's an increase. Tony suggests maybe an increase to 10 years. I'm just asking either James or Tony to maybe just comment on why the management plan can't, for example, be in perpetuity, because as you can probably see in about 10 years' time, in the end we just stop. And it might be that we're quite happy for it to just stop. On the other hand, members might want to see it go on for a longer period of time. Any views on that? Bearing in mind that the intent here is biodiversity, not so it becomes a self-regulating, maintaining condition, because I don't think that will necessarily work here.
Could I just say my intention there was that the management plan is there in perpetuity, but is reviewed at least every 5 years and updated as necessary. So that was my intention.
Well, if there's if we can have it permanently, that's fine, but would be unusual. Do you think you can get away with that, James?
I think it just comes on to the reasonableness of that condition. I would never say you never can. Is it reasonable to have that run in a perpetuity? I've certainly seen cases where you're looking at woodland management plans that cover 20 years. In terms of reasonableness, I think to put it in there in perpetuity, when in effect the use may cease and then that condition may still bite if it's left dormant or something. I think that's what members need to sort of balance.
It's not something we usually do. That's what I'm saying, is the justification would need to be there, and I'm not necessarily seeing that.
Why couldn't you,
Chairman, could we, I don't want to cut over anyone, but could we not put, as long as the lodge use is maintained, the biodiversity area needs to be maintained, and that does not fetter anything in the future if it moves to agriculture or whatever. I don't know.
I would agree with that, Councillor Harwood. It's just what I was about to suggest.
That would be a reasonable alternative. Yes, we can. I think we can amend it to that then. Okay, thank you very much. That seems to be a very useful discussion. Right, I have moved the rather amended motion. Is that seconded by anyone?
I'll second that, Chair. Yeah.
I'll second it.
Right, in that case, as long as everyone's clear on what we're voting for, I'm going to now move to the vote.
Sorry, who seconded it then? Sorry, I think I heard three voices. I think I heard Councillor Harwood. I think I heard
Councillor Harwood was fractionally ahead of anyone else.
Okay, thank you.
Right. If we can have the vote, please, Mrs. Snook.
Sorry, Chair, that's me who's got to call that.
Sorry, I'm skipping a line, Russell.
Sorry, I'd almost forgotten myself. Councillor Atkinson.
4.
Councillor Brindle.
4.
And I'm 4 too.
Harwood.
4.
Councillor Kimmans.
4.
Councillor Munford.
4.
Councillor Crawford Reid.
4.
Councillor Perry.
4.
Powell. Oh, sorry, he's absented himself. Councillor Spooner.
4.
Councillor Vizard.
4.
Councillor Wilby.
4.
And Councillor Young. Councillor Young.
4.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. I make that as unanimous, but I'll let Debbie confirm that.
Over to you, Mrs. Snook. We lost Debbie. Well, we seem to have lost Debbie. We'll have to move on, but I believe that was unanimous. We move to the next application, which is item 21, and I call upon Mr. Bailey to introduce the report.
Sorry, this is Debbie here. Can we just check that we've got Councillor Powell back into the meeting?
Can someone send him an
Councillor Powell has just rejoined it.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Okay,
Councillor
thank you.
Powell. The meeting isn't the same without you. We moved to Keeper's Cottage, Moat Park, and I call upon Mr. Bailey to introduce the report. Page 202.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If Tony can release, I'm trying to get the release of the presentation, but I can't. Can you release it, Tony, please? Otherwise, I can't. Right. Fine. Okay. Bear with me, members. I'll just share my desktop. Can I just confirm that you can see my screen?
I can.
Right, thank you, members. This is a council loan application. It's for One Keeper's Cottage in Moat Park in Maidstone. It's a joint presentation, this one, for both the application and the listed building consent. And in effect, what it seeks to do is a replacement of existing roof light and windows to bathroom and kitchen, including external works to the cottage and outbuilding. Just going through the photographs quickly. This is the site within the grounds of Moat Park, so this only relates to number 1. This is the property. Very traditional cat slide roof. So it relates to this property here. This is the outbuilding. Their work's going in terms of the eaves, in terms of this area where it's identified. These are all the works that the application proposes, and unfortunately they don't blow up particularly well, but generally what it relates to is removal of unsympathetic materials, recladding some of the broken tiles on the roof, re-looking at the drainage details, removing unsympathetic cement and replacing that with lime mortar, stripping out plasterboard walls and repairing them with lath and plaster. So I will add the council is on top of its game in terms of what it's proposing to do in this property, I would add. And effectively it's putting in renew the existing wall, renew the walls and for floor tiling. So it's going through a complete refurbishment of the site and taking out anything that's unsympathetic within the building. And I'll just go out. This is looking at in terms of what's occurring in the upper floors. But in terms of the assessment, the Keeper's Cottage is a Grade 2 listed property, 15th century former hall house, which remains in residential use. There's an historic outbuilding within its curtilage, and it is situated within a registered historic park, which is Moat Park. The condition of the building is such that it's clear that some external and internal works are required. The application proposes both external and internal works and seeks to address existing issues such as slip tiles and the use of unsympathetic materials, as I've set out, and replaces cement pointing and plasterboard and seeks to reinstate sympathetic materials such as lime mortar and lath and plaster. The application is supported by the Conservation Officer, and these works are to be welcomed as they would assist in preserving and enhancing the building, including its longevity. Historic England have raised no objections, and appropriate safeguarding conditions are recommended to deal with the details of the appropriate elements. There's no significant residential, amenity, ecological or highways issues, and the application is recommended for approval. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Bailey. Well, the application had to be introduced as it's a Borough Council application, but as you've heard from the officer, this is there's absolutely nothing wrong with this, quite the reverse. And I would support the recommendation on the papers. Would anyone wish to second that?
I'll second.
Who was that? There were two of you at once there.
Eddie.
Thank you, Councillor Powell. Did you wish to speak?
No, not at all. I agree with everything that was said. It's good to see it go ahead.
Absolutely. In that case, I would like to proceed to the vote. Although the recommendation having been moved and seconded as on the papers. If you can take the vote, Mr. Fitzpatrick, please.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, do you want me to separate them out, or do you want me to take them for both applications? So,
no, we need to vote separately on each one.
That's fine. Councillor Atkinson.
For.
Councillor Brindle.
For.
Councillor English.
For.
Councillor Harwood.
For.
Councillor Kimmans.
For.
Councillor Munford.
For.
Councillor Parfitt-Reid.
For.
Councillor Perry.
For.
Councillor Powell.
For.
Councillor Spooner.
For.
Councillor Vizard.
For.
Councillor Wilby. Councillor Wilby. And Councillor Young.
For.
Thank you.
Okay, one more call for Councillor Wilby. Councillor Wilby.
No, he's not with us at the moment, or he's having a connectivity problem. Okay. Mrs. Snook, can you give me the vote for those who are here?
That was 12 in favour, Chairman.
Thank you. None against. So it's passed. Mr. Bailey, did you wish to add anything on the second application before we go to the vote?
No, thank you, Chairman. I've already said that. Thank you.
No, I thought you had, but I just need to check. In that case, can we go to the second vote, please, on Keeper's Cottage? I will move the recommendation. Is that seconded?
Yes, Chairman.
Yes.
Thank you, Councillor Powell. Right, and if you take the vote, please, Mr. Fitzpatrick.
Councillor Atkinson.
For.
Councillor Brindle.
For.
Councillor English.
For.
Councillor Harwood.
For.
Councillor Kimmans.
For.
Councillor Munford.
For.
Councillor Parfitt-Reid.
For.
Councillor Perry.
For.
Councillor Powell.
For.
Councillor Spooner.
For.
Councillor Vizard.
For.
I won't take a vote for Councillor Wilby. Councillor Young.
For.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Can we have the total, please, Mrs. Sneak? The total, please.
Councillor, sorry, Chair. Maybe Debbie's having hassles. I've got 12. 12 for.
So
Chairman,
have I.
That's correct, those voting.
Thank you very much. So that is passed. Right, thank you very much, members. We move on rapidly to appeal decisions. Page 44 of your original agenda. Mr. Bailey or any other officer have anything to say on these two decisions?
No, Chair. Obviously, just to highlight that the number 2 was a decision, obviously, by members. It was an overturned decision, and the inspector supported the member decision on that one.
I think I've had an indication on the appeals from Councillor Perry. Councillor Perry.
Yes, I just wanted to say that's a great decision. I think we made the right decision. I'm really pleased about it, although whether we can enforce it or not is another question, but it's a very good decision from our point of view. Thank you.
Yes, I was pleased too, and thank you to all the officers.
Thanks everybody. Yeah.
All the officers who successfully defend the many appeals that we are winning at the moment. Well done, chaps and chapesses.
It's a very good job. Very good job. Yeah, they've done a very good job. Yeah.
Speaking of an enforcement, Councillor Perry, we now move on to the enforcement tracker report,
Yes.
which should be interesting as it's a coloured document that's been reproduced in black and white. So just to challenge how well you can figure these things out, ask the officers to introduce the report.
Thank you, Chairman. I've got on your screen because obviously, yes, I do appreciate it's not that easy to read a report in black and white, but I've got it in front of you.
Thank you.
So you can see the colour coding system. And in effect, the colour coding system means that just working downwards, we've got the blue colour on the system, which means that decision has been reached, the case will be closed, and then that obviously decision then gets taken off this enforcement tracker the next time it's reported to members. We've got the red which is you'll see in terms of a number of the items going down the list. That's it's moving into the next steps for formal action. So that could be going into a prosecution case on the basis that there's been non-compliance with the terms of the notice, and then we need to go into the next steps. You've got the amber colour, which is awaiting a planning application or appeal decision. You can see there's quite a few of them that are obviously where it says appeal in progress. You've got the green colour in the system where it's awaiting appeal start dates and compliance. So that is effectively outside of the control of officers. And you've obviously got some areas that are white, which is just highlighting the fact that contentious are cases that are being monitored. There have been injunctions on the land, as you can see, and this one, land rear of Never End Farm. Anything with injunction is a sort of an ongoing monitoring position for the council, because if we enforce, we don't actually enforce the injunction, that's a High Court matter, but obviously we have to produce the evidence in order to take the matter further and see whether we wish to go for a committal case to the High Court. So that's why they're on the list, they are monitored and maintained. Just to sort of highlight to members, this is only where we've reached formal action. So this is where enforcement notices have been served or injunctions have been served and we're monitoring them. What we also do is we have a kind of list, a priority list that we call it, and that's how we effectively prioritise our cases as we move through the system. There's lots of activities, you'll be aware, in enforcement. We need to sort of monitor and track that, and then we need to obviously decide which ones reach the highest level of priority. They're not on this list, but obviously they're a list that we do, and then we work through that list in terms of how they comply with the local enforcement plan and actually what the level of harm is, so decide in terms of the next level of action we take. So that's just sets out in terms of the formal activity, and maybe now might be an opportunity just to sort of say to members of the committee, I'm also trying to look at how we can get some real-time information to members on live enforcement cases. So I'm kind of working at a currently with a sort of a dashboard system. I thought, sorry, Chairman, if I'm sort of going over the top here, but I'm kind of aware that there is a desire for members to be able to have sort of updates on live enforcement cases, and I'm looking at a system where through our dashboard system, members can maybe log into the system and then retrieve a sort of a live update on a case. So I'm hopefully I'll be coming to members pretty soon. I'm just trialing that system out at the moment. Just making sure it's fit for purpose, and hopefully I'll be coming back to you pretty soon with sort of an introduction to gaining live access to some enforcement cases. So thank you, Chairman. That's it from me.
Thank you, Mr. Bailey. I don't think you're going over the top. I think that was a very useful indication. Councillor Brindle, I think you're indicating on this item.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Bailey. I was going to ask about live enforcements and how we can track those, so that's very good news to hear. My second point is, would it be possible, please, for us to have a link to the technicoloured version rather than the black and white, because I think that might ease our reading of the documents. This is also anything that comes, and I'm thinking now of audit where we have things in colour and it's black and white, and it makes it very difficult to read it and understand it easily. So if you could find a way of giving us a key or a different method of indicating the level that the enforcement is. Yes, you see that's at the bottom there, but if it's in glorious black and white, it's not easy to understand what the narrative is on or the colour system is on the right.
I understand that, Councillor Brindle. It is. I've taken this directly from the link that's sent round by committee services clerk, Debbie Snook. So she sends two links, a link round before the meeting, and this information is on the link, but I totally understand, members, that it's much easier to have. What I might do in the future is just make sure when this item is going, I might just send members a PDF version before the meeting, so you've got access to a colour version, but it is an electronic version, unfortunately, because there are issues with printing, which I won't go into and bore you with at the current time.
And that will be great. Thank you, Mr. Bailey.
No problem.
Thank you. That is very useful. Right, Councillor Mumford.
We're not reinventing the wheel here. An extra column on that block of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, and then put in an extra column in the actions would answer that. So red would become 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Quite simple.
Thank you very much, Steve. It's always useful. Right, Councillor Powell, and then I'd like to wind up.
Yes, sure. That's a very informative report, and thank you very much, James. Just one question that I was going to ask. We constantly hear about the I'm not going to use the word road developers, that's a bit strong, but when they sort of chop hedges and cut trees down without any authorised kind of permission, and the only way that we can do anything then is to go back to enforcement. And I know we can't sellotape the trees back together so they stand up, but we have to do something with the developer. Is there anything like that where we have enforcement, or is that dealt with in a completely different way?
No, I suppose on that basis, what we have to do is we have to check whether, say, for instance, the hedge, we have to check whether that's covered by the hedgerows regulations 2007. If it is, then obviously we can go down the same routes. There is a prosecution case, replantment orders, etc. But if it's not covered by the hedgerows regulations, then we don't have any control over planning. And likewise with trees, similarly, if they're covered if they're in a conservation area covered by a TPO, obviously those are criminal offences on summary conviction. And we can go down a prosecution on those individuals if we have the evidence. And we've got the ability to bring people in for interview under caution, etc. But if they're not covered by those various legislations, then we can't take any action on them because they're not development per se. It's cutting down a tree. So and that issue, we do get complaints about those matters, and what I'm hoping to do in the very near future, as I say, is allow members the ability where they can log into a dash system, they can go to their particular parish, and it will pull up all the live enforcement cases we've got in that parish. And that means that, and what we're working on is a little update box which allows the enforcement officers to put an update of where that case is at that particular time. Obviously, I can't go back in time, so we'll be setting a benchmark date. And I think the 1st of January 2021 is a good benchmark date. But I'm hopeful moving forward that will give members the ability to review cases like that moving forward.
That is something that we've been hoping to achieve for quite some time, and it is really good news to hear that we're making progress on that. That will make the system work so much better, not just for the borough but for parishes and other bodies too. So thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, members and officers who contributed to this rather long meeting, but perhaps successful meeting. It's always nice to have time to discuss the non-planning non-development control items, and at least with this adjourned meeting we've had a chance to do that. Thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of the evening.